Welcome to a football show, Monday edition, live and at our normal time. That is Paul Kuharsky. I am Braden Gall, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Always great to have those two companies along for the ride. If you want to jump into the comment section, please do so. We have time for your questions today. You can kind of take the show anywhere you want to, but we will be starting with Cam Ward and the rest of the Titans rookies at rookie camp. PK, too many sports balls for me, rolly balls for me over the weekend. I did not get out there on Saturday. Very bummed about that. How are you, sir?
Week. Greetings. I'm well. Shortened, a little bit of a shortened weekend, but I managed to make some of my weekdays feel weekendish, parts of them. So I'm
That's
just
nice.
fine.
Yeah. Yo, my wife was out of town for like 6 days, so 0 weekend days at any point during last week for me.
You need those children to grow.
Well, that's what we're working on. That's what we're working on. We had two softball games, 2 soccer games on Saturday, all right during Titans practice and Callahan's media availability, and then 2 more soccer games on Sunday. I think both of my daughters were just like beside themselves Sunday night trying to go to bed. So it was I was very fulfilled though, because very few things in my life, PK, bring me more joy than watching my girls compete on an athletic field, no matter how good they are. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch. So I know fans were excited to see all the tweets, all the clips, all the videos, all the individual drills and all the warm-ups and the stretchings and the lunges and the hammies, all that good stuff, PK. Obviously, special thanks to Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue for keeping this product free for all of you. So again, go check out those 2 great businesses. And if you want to jump in to the comment section, thumbs up on the YouTube page. I know we're growing over there, so we do appreciate you guys showing up and love having you in the comments. So jump in over there. Okay, just first and foremost, broadly, what was the goal, according to Brian Callahan, for the rookies in their 3-day camp prior to today joining with the veterans?
Well, they weren't having competition camp, so to speak. So it wasn't competitive practice. There was no offense versus defense. There certainly was no 11 on 11. So it's more get some technique down, get some operations down, and be ready for today when they plugged in today, Monday, for when they plugged in with veterans, so that they're up to speed and not underwater. Though there's a degree of that inevitably when rookies join veterans who've had a week of phase 2 OTAs already, and obviously a year for a lot of them in Brian Callahan's system. So that's where they take off, and it's a lot better for those guys to be with mentors and guys who are at the head of the line who they can follow in all of this stuff now.
We'll talk a lot about Cam Ward. We've got a clip of him talking about some of the things he's focused on. We'll actually show you some video of him working out throughout the course of some individual stuff. And Femi Oladejo, of course, is going to be a big part of this as well. Eddie says there, Femi certainly looks the part of an edge, but what was the feel for him being even close to contributing? That's an interesting question, Paul. We can kind of go. It is live. Yes, Coach Wells, good to see you. It is live today, and we do apologize about that. That was special circumstances last week. Before we get into the specifics of each player, because I do want to spend some time on each guy, at least the ones that were out there. And I'm curious, Brinker and Borgonzi had said pretty clearly, hey, we want you to be able to pick up exactly what a Titans player looks like. And certainly in 3 days of rookie camp, you're not going to learn everything, and there's a long way to go here. So I'm not holding you to what you're going to say here, but I'm curious if you noticed any threads that ran through every player you saw from at least the draft class. Maybe some of the UDFAs fit into this as well. In your opinion, could you see something that made them all seem cohesive or together or aligned? Does that make sense?
No, I think that's a lot to ask from an hour and 10-minute session where they're not going against anybody. If you look at, and we'll talk about these guys maybe a little bit later, but Gunner Helm, I thought there were 2 guys over there with the offensive line. With the tight ends, but I'm looking through the roster really quickly. I see only Drake Dabney, a tight end, a tryout tight end from Texas Christian. Then maybe there was one other, but that's the extent of his work outside of when they joined the receivers for stuff with Ward. Jackson Slater's working with, Brandon Crenshaw Dixon from Florida, who's an undrafted rookie free agent, and a center, Brandon Yates from West Virginia. So when you're in a small group like that, you're getting some very detailed and hands-on coaching from Luke Stocker with the tight ends, from Bill Callahan with the offensive linemen. So that's good. I mean, you're getting some precise coaching from those guys, but to be able to see anything big picture that would be the thread you're looking for through all of them. I mean, I think that stuff goes back to kind of what they said about identifiable Titans in terms of their qualities. And I think it's way early to have identifiable Titans, I think, because there's a draft for need element in this, with holes on the roster element of this. And, we need to see them in the Titans system to learn more of what the Titans system is in year 2, with some adjustments from a very poor year 1. What's a better roster do in this system when hopefully they're able to move the ball and stop other teams from moving the ball better? Saying that you like height, weight, speed, and guys who love to win doesn't delineate you much from the rest of the league.
Again, I wasn't there, but you can maybe correct me if you need to. But it seems like some of the response to Femi Oladejo was sort of his, I guess you could call it vocal leadership qualities in whatever a rookie camp affords you. That Cam Ward, pulls aside Iomanner to run a route again. And so maybe just kernels of sort of leadership. Restrepo being asked to be the first one, because I'm assuming
I don't think anybody's asked to be the first one. I think guys order themselves there. I mean, I did a piece on this a couple of years ago about the order guys go, because it always drove me crazy that Mason Kinsey was at or near the head of the line. And I'm like, in most positions, the lead guy is the lead guy in drills. And some of them, I found that year that I did it, felt the obligation to go first or feel like they should go first. And others, like DeAndre Hopkins, were like, I don't really care about the order of guys in a line. So I think a guy like Xavier Restrepo is used to going first at Miami. Iomanner is probably used to going first at Stanford, but the one who steps up at the drill at Titans minicamp probably meant more to Restrepo, and the other guys probably laid back enough to not care that much about it.
And the only thing I was going to say was, in a situation like this where not a lot matters, right? But you also want Cam Ward to get a good rep. You can't have the first guy, you want the first guy to have the most comfort with the quarterback in this situation, because it's his first 3 days in an NFL practice field. And so I just thought, hey, having a guy that you feel comfortable with to run the route exactly like he's supposed to, kind of be where Cam Ward expects him, little rapport there, a little history. I don't think it means anything for his chances to make the team or for anything down the line, but it does show that, hey, Cam's comfortable with this guy, which we clearly know about his conversations with other teams and with the Titans. I'm just trying to pull on, what threads can I find here? And it seems like Femi was more vocal than I think people expected. Cam showed the things that we expected. And hey, Restrepo's right there with the other guys, looking like he knows how to run the drills already. So again, I'm not saying that means anything long term here. I'm just trying to analyze what I read and what I heard from all of you guys at camp.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'd take the Femi vocal stuff as leadership yet, but he's going to be a vocal, noisy guy, which tends to make a guy like that, more of a media favorite. He was good at the podium, and he's fun to watch in practice for sure.
All right, let's go to Cam Ward first here, and this is his answer. This is at his press conference, and this is sort of what Cam Ward is focused on, sort of now just getting started as the new franchise quarterback, supposedly, of the Tennessee Titans.
Just being consistent at the playbook, being consistent in my footwork, and I would say just getting my eyes and feet together, and just having an idea and being prepared to know what to do, with the football. I think I did good. I still got a lot of stuff to get better on. I don't know the whole playbook yet, but I know the majority of it to go play a game. So I know I got a lot more work to do, and I'm willing to do it.
So I have not had a chance to chat with him yet, and I am curious. One of the things that's really struck me, PK, is sort of where did he get the thing that drives him from like an attention to detail standpoint or the chip on the shoulder standpoint. Like I'm just actually from a human psychology standpoint, I'm curious where that all comes from. If it's a person in his life that he was around growing up, if it's just sort of how he's wired. I am curious about that because it does feel like leadership was one of the things we talked a lot about in the pre-draft process. And just some of those answers are like, yeah, I need to focus on this. I need to work on that. I need to do this. Again, rerunning the route that he didn't do well. Like I'm curious where he gets all that from, but that's a secondary storyline from like the actual football standpoint.
Well, I think a lot of that stuff starts from not getting recruited. Now he played at a high school that didn't have him throw a lot, but that didn't mean that he didn't have a good arm and a good head. And there have been some quarterbacks out of limited offenses in high school. You probably know some of them off the top of your head who still got recruited based on their talent, even if they didn't have the film. And he did not get that privilege, so to speak. And that's why he wound up at Incarnate Word and had to go that path from Incarnate Word to Washington State to Miami to wind up the number 1 pick in the draft. And so I think if you're climbing that ladder, you have to do a lot of the kind of things you're talking about. And I think it's inevitable that you end up with a chip on your shoulder when you have to zigzag and climb hard the way that he had to. So that's my early impression. It was my impression before they drafted him. And it certainly is my impression in the bits we've heard about him since he's landed here.
I think you're right. It's almost impossible for that stuff not to affect you, maybe amplify some things. But it does feel like, hey, I'm going to reach out to the Titans and get everybody's number as they're making the picks. Or I'm going to do like all the little tiny things that sort of he clearly gets, whether it's playing on a video game and calling out Calvin Ridley in a good way. Like the little things, like he's clearly very intelligent and he's clearly very committed. And again, the ATD part of his game is going to serve him well. But it feels like there's something in there foundationally. I don't know. And again, maybe this is just me workshopping an idea with you like we like to do on Mondays. But I feel like there's something in there foundationally that was instilled in him or he was born with that like sort of gets him to the places where he's getting into the crevices of all this stuff. And that's not something that we've seen from every rookie quarterback that's come into this organization or into the league. So I agree with you. I think that sort of cements all of this. Hey, I won a bunch of games in high school. Nobody recruited me. It's going to amplify that part of your being even further. But I would be curious. That's the thing that kind of has been struck to me over the last few days is like, I'd like to know who got this into him, like, because it clearly expanded, but there has to be something there at its core. So anyway, I thought that was super interesting stuff. I do think the leadership stuff is always there. Taking the time to get to know all of his teammates, Callahan's comments about, his attention to detail. It's all the right stuff that you want to be hearing if you're a Titans fan.
I wanted to ask him, he was talking about, he's very obviously conscientious about trying to get to know everybody in the building, the custodians, the cooks, the service people, which is a terrific way to approach things and stuff. Had we had a little more time, I would have asked him, like, how's the recall on that? Because you're talking about a lot of people. And so you meet the custodian the first day and you make an effort to introduce yourself, make eye contact, maybe get a nugget that you could remember. But how are you at remembering him 3 days later when you encounter him again? And how much, work is that to develop those relationships early on where do you know him the second time? Do you know him the third time? How long does it take? Yeah. I know personally, as I try to do that, sometimes I just suck at it. And
we're getting older too.
You're right. But at stages where I might have tried to do that, I just wasn't very good at it.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. It's like, I grabbed the playbook from the day that I was drafted, and I've been deep in the playbook. I'm trying to get to know the janitors. I'm going to make, and Ed says this, we're going to rerun this one route because I didn't like how it landed, or calling players as they're drafted. Like, it just, every little detail seems to be something he's very intentional about. And it feels like that is something that was inside of him all along, and that maybe came out through his college process, his recruiting process, and now through the draft process. But you cannot, and I know a few of you are in the comments here talking about Cam Ward being the villain. because of the Shedeur Sanders stuff that's going on and all the hype around him. Like you can't be the number one pick in the draft and make millions of dollars and be the savior of a franchise and then turn around and say I've been disrespected. So
he's no villain.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I totally agree. I think Shedeur is the villain in the story, if anything. So,
and I think there's another thing here. You know, Ed contextualizes it, says he likes the fact that he called Elick back to rerun a route that was a problem. No huge deal. Well, if every person that hears that story says that, it does kind of become a huge deal. It's just part of the way it works. And so there's a mythology that's already building, whether he ultimately is deserving of it or not. And that's where, like, I don't want to rain on the parade and say, don't be excited about that. But it's one route in one mini camp practice where there are 6 drafted players on the field. and so I'm very key on emphasizing the not a huge deal element.
Yeah, I agree. I think what I'm trying to do is put a puzzle together that's got 1,000 pieces and all we have is like 25 pieces, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm trying to see what do these 25 pieces all have in common right now, knowing that there's 900 more to go or whatever, I think is sort of how I'm looking at it. So
975 in that case. And I'm no mathematician.
I'm rounding here, big guy. I'm rounding here. You know, I can count to 4 though, because Sinkers Beverages is the 4-time liquor store of the year in Nashville. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 years in a row that this has been the best place to buy your booze. And in fact, you can search Uber Eats and have it delivered directly to your house so that you don't have to drive. If you're having a big party, if you're having a gathering this weekend, make sure you swing by Sinkers Beverages. And again, they'll continue to send booze to your house if you just use the internet, all those fancy apps, Uber Eats there, you search them. Sign up for the in-crowd as well. It's a fantastic kind of service there that they have for all the sort of members of the club there, and you get access to allocations, you get access to all kinds of cool stuff that they've got going on there. Great merch, great wine selection, award-winning craft beer fridge as well. So lots of good stuff over at Sinkers Beverages. Make sure you check that out.
Go to Eddie. Go to Eddie's comment here. He says Ward definitely has everything off the field you want. If Callahan can rein in his recklessness on the field where he couldn't with Levis, it makes you hopeful. See, this to me is dangerous pronouncement territory. Ward definitely has everything off the field you want. So like Eddie's making a check mark, like that's taken care of and done. You don't know, like he looks great right now in this stuff we're talking about, but it's a small glimpse into it at the 3 weeks after the draft stage. And we don't know. It's cause to be hopeful that he's got those things.
Sure.
But we don't know what happens to Cam Ward when gets stuff like introduced at the Savannah Bananas game in front of 75,000 people and is lauded by everybody, right? We don't know what becomes of Cam Ward. You think he won't change and he'll stay that same guy. But as he walks around Nashville and everybody kisses his ass and he gets free drinks and free food and people coming at him with his autograph or a story of where they were when he was drafted and all of this hoopla that comes with it. So you can't put the check mark in the box yet. We have to see 3 years from now, as it's paired with how he plays well or not or whatever, how he deals with all of that stuff. Yeah. So you got to be careful about saying he's got anything yet. You have to wait and see on everything, even the stuff that seems like he's got it. We've seen a lot of Titans at a lot of positions, not on the scale of Cam Ward, right? But like, and people will kill me for making this comparison, but Nicholas Petit-Frere had a decent rookie year. And you said that guy as a 3rd round pick is going to be a serviceable right tackle for this team, at least through a 4-year rookie contract. And then everything went to shit for a variety of reasons. And now, you know, his name is mentioned with Andre Dillard and Daly. So I'm not saying he's on that track. I'm saying you just can't get ahead of yourself with this stuff.
It's a good start though. Like it's the right start to get to the right career. It's not the Isaiah Wilson start.
No, absolutely not.
That's what you don't want 3 arrests before training camp opens up or whatever the number is. So like that's the key here is all you can do is sort of check the boxes that we've got to date. And I do think the little anecdotes do add up to a picture. and you're trying to gain as much insight as you can into this picture. And I think right now, and so far to date in his career, we have a pretty good picture of who he is off the field. But I agree, power, money, influence, fame, it can corrupt very quickly, and so you just don't know.
Remember the movie No Way Out? I think it was Kevin Costner's first breakout movie. He'd been in something else, but that's the movie that made him. And when that movie was a hit, that's what got Bull Durham greenlit and took off. And if No Way Out hadn't been a hit, Bull Durham wasn't going to get greenlit. And so in No Way Out, spoiler alert for a movie that's 30 years old, he had he had done something that was scandalous, and he was part of the investigation looking into himself, the guy that had done this. And they had the FBI or CIA or whatever, this very blurry picture that was running through this very old technology. And it was increasingly going through this machine and becoming clearer and clearer. And he was racing against this machine that was going to eventually make this picture clear enough to people that they were going to know it was him. So that's kind of the picture of any football player, right? As you're developing it, you got this kind of blurry picture, right? Maybe the left wrist is clear in the picture at the beginning, but the face is blurry and it's got to keep going through this machine. In the NFL, it's a 2.5-year machine before you get the clear picture. That's where he is. No Way Out, phenomenal movie.
Yeah, very relevant and timely reference. I agree.
I'm a huge Kevin Costner guy.
Eddie says, I do like his stuff in the 80s and 90s for sure. Eddie said, LOL PK. I'll say he seems to have what you want off the field based on the info we have seen up to this point. Is that enough of disclaimers? Yes, you've cleared your throat. You've cleared your throat sufficiently, Eddie. I agree with you. Let's see here. So Jason says, such a good movie. You only discover at the end that he's the bad guy. Shush. 30-year spoiler. Okay, fine. All right, well, here's the thing. If you're watching on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook, please thumbs up. Share the product. We do appreciate that, of course. And make sure you check out Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., open Wednesday through Sunday. Award-winning Black Hawk Farms American Wagyu beef brisket. It's spectacular and very real, so go check it out. If you are watching, we're going to play some clips while we chat about Cam Ward, specifically in the receiving core, because we put together like 4 clips here of Cam doing some stuff. So if you're watching, get to see it. We'll talk a little bit about this as we're watching, because I want to talk about his release, some of his footwork, things he was talking about, what he was going to work on, because he is a little funky. He's just kind of a funky player, I think, and I think you have to get used to that. So let's see if we can do this correctly. A couple of old middle-aged guys here, see if we can figure this out. So here is a couple of clips of Cam. I do think that the arm slot is interesting. I think the footwork's going to be interesting, and I don't think it's anything new, PK, that we didn't expect to see. What did you see from him physically on the field, running through very slow, very methodical sort of introductory drills as a quarterback?
Well, this stuff here is pretty slow that we're watching, but later when he was throwing 2 receivers, I thought that the release is so quick you almost can't catch the arm angle or angles, and he's not throwing through any traffic, and so the arm angles are not relevant. And he's not needing to do anything unusual with his arm. So I thought that I would be alarmed at the arm angle stuff. I actually didn't feel like it was an issue at all. The release is super quick. It's a little quirky, like I don't know if it's that his elbow is kind of tighter to his body. That maybe is what it is about it. But I thought he threw the ball quite well. He had 5 drops, which didn't help him. And I wasn't solely focused on him. Once video stopped and we were just to still shots, I went around to try to get a look at some other guys. I think, the arm angle stuff will become more interesting to take in as we see him behind a line and with guys arms up. He's a little bit smaller than, they list him at 6'2". Yeah. He was 6'1.5" in combine measurements. And the last 2 Titans starting quarterbacks in Will Levis and Ryan Tannehill have been 6'4". And so you get used to seeing a certain size dropping back there, and he's not that.
Yeah.
And so I think that takes some getting used to, and that's a guy that's going to have to work harder, I think, to get the ball over some stuff in front of him at times.
It's funny, the arm release, and I think on the first of the 3 clips, you can really see the kind of the 3/4 partial sidearm release a little bit, and there's some clips of the receivers running here if you're watching as well. I think the arm angle will help him. I think as the offensive and defensive line become a part of this, and you got to learn to go around guys and over guys, I think that's going to be a part of his creativity to sort of find ways to fire the football around folks. I do think the footwork, I think, is going to have to be like one of Callahan's, I think, top priorities. But I don't know if that's detrimental to his game, because eventually these guys that are athletic, they overcome that stuff once they learn the technique that the coach wants them to play with in the first place. C. Rich says Braden's passive aggressiveness towards Cam Ward is why I tuned into the podcast. I don't know exactly what that means. I have healthy skepticism around everything that happens in sports. So that's kind of how I approach this, which is I think Cam's going to be super exciting. It's going to be fun to watch. I hope he's very good for all you Titans fans. But to say that we know exactly what he's going to be, I think is kind of foolish. So I don't know. What that means.
And Coach Wills asks, is there, or no, sorry, Z Dean, was there something specific about his release? I brought it up to Callahan and Ward. Well, yeah, in college, he threw very sidearmy, which is not a conventional quarterback release. And so I asked, Callahan, I'll write about this a little bit, but in synopsis, I asked Callahan, if they had any concerns about it. Pretty much you're drafting a guy's throwing motion. You don't change a guy's throwing motion at this stage. It's ingrained. And Callahan said, you can work on lower body. You can't really work on upper body, and that they don't have any issues with it. And I asked Cam about, how it developed and if anyone else raised it as an issue during the draft process. I don't remember what he said really about how it developed, but he did say that it didn't really come up as an issue for anyone during the draft process. I will write something about that at some point this week.
Coach Will says Braden's still working on the trade back scenarios. That's a funny joke. I appreciate that. I don't know why I get labeled as the anti-Cam guy. Like, I'm not anti-Cam. All right.
If you have any questions about Cam, you're anti-Cam. If you're not, this is how it works. If you're not like throwing a party and throwing confetti, you're anti. I'm very anti-Restrepo because I think Restrepo has some issues.
Well, and this is kind of what you were just getting at. Is Rich says, who was the last quarterback they tried to change their throwing motion? Like, the one I remember that stands out to me is Byron Leftwich, because Byron Leftwich had this really elongated, like really, but like they didn't try to do anything to it. They just said, sure. Chad Pennington had a really bizarre throwing motion because his arm was weak sauce, and it's good that he played in Miami. And it was okay down there, but like these guys don't really get their motions.
Like Bortles had a bad throwing motion that I think there's only so much you can do with it.
So I think the release, and I think one of the receivers, I don't remember who the quote was from, but basically saying like, you better be on time where you're supposed to be because the ball's coming. And I think that's an important.
That was Isle Manor.
That's Isle Manor, okay, because that's a good way to run drills. Like, let's run them like they're in the games, even if they're just rookie camp on a Saturday with very few people. Jack says not as bad as VY's throwing motion. That was crazy. That was a very sidearm, but he was also 6'5". That was the difference with him. So. Yeah. Didn't they try to tweak Levis last year, or am I misremembering that?
I talked about feet. They talked about feet. That Callahan's talked strictly about feet and the waist down. Now, I did talk to Jordan Palmer, and I wrote this. That he's worked with Levis for 6 weeks, and he said you can work on lower body and pretend like it doesn't influence upper body and never talk about arm or shoulders while you're very much working on arm and shoulders.
Fair enough.
So
2025, no throwing motion is the same, says Coach Wills here. Will Levis has trained throwing motion. We saw what happened with that. I think Will Levis's processing and accuracy, which is something that Brian Callahan talked about from the beginning of his tenure with Will Levis, was the problem. The footwork was also the problem. Pocket awareness was the problem. I think Cam Ward has a great release and great pocket awareness. Those are 2 steps in the right direction from Will Levis, but the footwork is still a little funky. And I think teaching the correct pocket awareness is, I think, the key here. is that you can't just spin around and do all the stuff you did at Washington State and in Miami. You can't do that in the NFL. And I think we've said that, for weeks now, that's going to have to be the thing that he kind of polishes out of his game a little bit. But the release looks like it did at Miami, which is lightning quick and on time normally.
Yeah. And look, in terms of those decisions that you're talking about, I've said, he's going to do some of that. He's going to, in order to get it out of him to some degree, to the right degree, he's going to have to do some of it that's bad in game situations, certainly in the preseason, but in the regular season. And you're going to have some second or third and 28s probably, but before, he figures out the line.
We are like 1/10 of the way through his preparation for the season, and so far so good is basically all you have to say. It's all we have to say about Cam Ward at this point. All right, let's hear from Femi. This was actually from Jim Wyatt's Twitter account, so I just want to make sure everybody knows this. There's going to be, if you're watching, you're going to get a couple of clips of Femi and then some comment from him afterward. So I'm going to play the whole thing for you watching. You'll be able to see it. If you're listening, I'll trim out some of the dead air for you all. But here was a clip from Wyatt on Twitter, a compilation of some stuff from Femi Oladejo on Saturday.
Yeah, I would say as a kid, I was just always the extrovert, leading team chants as a kid. So I think it's just who I am, and I try to help impact players in a positive way.
So I think, Braden, he's a guy that's going to help you be excited about him. But it doesn't do anything to wash away the fact that he's played 10 games at edge. And one of the things he talked about was, it helped me think less or not. I don't have to think for other people now. I just have to think for myself. Well, that's fine. I have no problems with that. If that wasn't his thing, thinking for other people, and he's just thinking for himself as an edge, more power to him. And he's got potential to be a good edge. He's certainly thicker than an Arden Key and a Harold Landry, and they're moving that direction. Draymond is that kind of guy. I have no problem with them being beefier there. Derek Morgan and Brian Arakpo were those kind of guys that were inherited by Mike Vrabel, who switched them. If I'm not mistaken, right, they went 3-4 with Vrabel, and before that they were 4-3. So those guys were ends, turned outside linebackers, and the Titans were beefier there, but they were not getting to the quarterback enough with thicker guys. Now, some people will tell you speed to power is the first and foremost way to get to the quarterback, not bend. All right. Now, you look at Javon Curse, and that wasn't the case. Bend was the thing. Earning the edge. One. I don't really care how you get there. I just care that you have somebody, an A guy who can get there regularly, and a B guy who can, pair with that well, along with an interior that can push. And Femi Oladejo might be that guy, but I don't think on opening day we're going to say, whoa, I did not see that coming in terms of him being in the backfield so much.
Yeah. With my first thought was actually, how about this? Let's play the clip because this is him kind of talking about focusing on the edge.
I think it freaked me up a little bit. Just I'm going to go downhill right now and not really think for everybody else, but just for myself now that I'm not responsible for all 11 in a sense.
I was asking that.
Yeah. And so what I think is interesting, so I went back and watched some of the clips that I took from watching him at Senior Bowl, where I was probably within like 15 feet or 20 feet of him. I'm not sure if I was allowed to be there, but I was down on the field watching him do one-on-ones with like Ariante Ursary from Minnesota and Josh Connerly at Oregon, two guys that were drafted fairly highly. And like he didn't win the reps every time, but the thing I just noticed looking at the clips from Saturday and looking at back on my phone, I literally went and looked at it immediately, was that he does look bigger. He looks like he's put on not bad weight, good weight since even just January and in the Senior Bowl. And so I do think that, to your point, I think the personality type is great to help fans get to know and celebrate him and be a fan of him. I am curious to see, because one of the things you've got to do is assimilate yourself into a locker room, and we know that Cam Ward does it very well. The question is, can you do too much talking if you're a rookie? You got to do a lot of listening when you're a rookie, I imagine.
I think he's the kind of guy that'll find the right line. Here, go to John Boyd's comment there. This is typical Titans have you just where they want you. He says, I'll take pressures. He just needs to be disruptive this year. So second round pick on a team with no pass rushing. And this guy will just take pressures. He just wants him to be disruptive. He'll be perfectly happy.
Is it John Robinson's burner?
He doesn't have to get sacks.
I mean,
disruption is a nice thing. Derek Morgan, semi-disruptive. Was that good enough for a first-round pick? No, it wasn't anywhere close. Harold Landry, a disruptor, constant disruptor? No. An occasional disruptor? Yes. Unbelievable work ethic guy, mindset, great guy to have in the locker room. Number one rusher over the course of his career? Not good enough. Not good enough.
Okay, where was Landry? What was exact? I don't remember the exact pick that Landry was. It was early second round, somewhere in there.
In the 30s.
I could check real fast if you give me a second. Harold Landry was picked 41, so that's 11 spots higher than Femi was taken. Do you think it's fair to ask Femi Oladejo to be better than Harold Landry?
Yeah, sure. I think Harold Landry was a little disappointing overall for that spot. I think in the second round, you should find a guy who is good at what you are looking for him to be.
Man, over 50 sacks for Harold Landry as a Tennessee Titan. I think at 41, that position. I don't know. I'm torn.
I understand the raw number of it. But Harold Landry had what, 10 sacks last year? 9?
I don't. Great.
Did he beat a tackle and go sack the quarterback? Not many.
Yeah.
And so, the Titans, their best feature on defense last year, I would argue, was their secondary. And Harold Landry benefited from that a couple of times. And I'm not saying their secondary is great. I think it was a bad team. It was a 3-win team overall. And on a 3-win team, it wasn't a very good defense in a lot of situations. But I think Harold Landry was a good player who should have been a more productive player.
Okay, so maybe John Boy's actually making my point here, which is 52 at a premium position. What expectation would you have from a quarterback selected at 52? And
quarterback's a completely different thing. Quarterbacks get rounded up. Pick another thing. From a wide receiver at 52, there have been some great receivers in the league that are drafted around 52.
I think every position, though, has a different okay, how about this? Let me step back and I'll give you my perspective on this. I think he was drafted to be their number 2 edge. Now, is that you could argue that's too costly at 52, or maybe risk reward because he hadn't played enough for the position. But I think your goal is still number 1 next year edge, top 5 pick.
Well, that's yeah. Well,
and so he's not I think if he gives you 50 sacks at 52 overall over the next 5 or 6 years, and he's a high quality number 2, I think he's a great draft pick. But maybe I don't know. I think that's just I look at like a receiver at 52, and I expect him to be a starter receiving, but maybe a number 2, right? Like I don't
a number 2 that pushes for 1,000 yards.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay, well, if he's pushing for 1,000 yards, I think comparable. You're pushing for 10 sacks. No.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want this guy pushing for 10 sacks.
Okay, I'm totally good with that. If you get 8.5 to 12 sacks on average over a 5 or 6 year period of time. Again, 50 sacks in 6 seasons, let's say, which is a little less than 10, but it's about 8.5. And you go get an edge at number 3 next year in the draft. I think that's what you drafted him to be. I think, well, and especially
and Landry, frankly, did that. He was in the 8.5 to 12 range. So I can't be. I'm being too down on Harold Landry. I'm not too down on Harold Landry. And they had a couple of years where they rushed for and were very productive.
A lot of pressure, yeah. And I think
2 years there in their prime, maybe. It didn't last long enough.
I agree. It probably was 19 and 20, honestly, which is Landry's second season, and it was the Tannehill years. I think your analysis of Landry is accurate, and I think a lot of the commenters' analysis of Landry is accurate, which is some low impact sacks, not a guy who could do it all by himself, was productive, but maybe didn't live up to being number 41 overall. But I think overall, a productive 6 years in the Titans uniform. I think it was good enough to be a starter on the team. And if your second starter if Femi Oladejo turns out to be a 6 or 7 year starter as a number 2 edge, I think that's a great draft pick. Maybe not perfect, but I think it's a pretty good pick.
But we've discussed this before. Here's where kind of the thinking, even if you're thinking ahead like that and he's your number 2 edge, where the thinking doesn't connect for me is that you're drafting some developmental guys and you've got a staff that hasn't shown you that they're player developers. I mean, the staff before that was more player developers and they didn't develop enough players. So where's Ben Bloom's resume? And I like Ben Bloom, but I don't know about his resume of developing edge rushers. He came from Cleveland. So Myles Garrett was there. I don't remember what position Ben Bloom was coaching in Cleveland. Might have been inside, might have been outside. He was around some good edge rushers. I don't know what the list of people he developed is. You go to inside, like I know this one off the top of my head. Frank Bush, when you list the people that Frank Bush has developed, you're like, those are the best guys you can list?
Well, he's got a lot to work with.
He's the guy to develop James Williams and Cedric Gray.
Right, hadn't accomplished much so far. All right, that's all I was kind of getting at. I think he's a good. Certainly, the personality types can be fun to follow and fun to track because he's like a younger Arden Key, as I've already seen the Arden Key Femi Oladejo podcast talk coming for our jobs. Edge podcast talk on from the Titans defensive line room. Let's see. Coach Will says we drafted our number 2 edge and our number 3 receiver for the future. Probably.
Right. And it is difficult when the team is poor to build kind of patiently back of a position forward. But, while you're waiting on number 1 picks to show up. So next year you get your number 1 edge. When do you get your number 1 wideout? Calvin's contract runs out.
2027.
Upgrade that position. So next year, and are we saying you only get number 1s at a position in the first round?
Man, would have been nice to have an extra couple picks in the first round next year. See, look, I'm still working on the trade back scenarios. No, I'm just kidding. Look here. Let's talk about the receivers here. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Go check them out. Let's talk about the receivers here because we got a couple of questions here about TJ Sheffield as well. What I think is interesting is watching I think the only thing I get from watching any of the clips of the receivers and talking to some folks that were there is that Restrepo is the most comfortable for him to start with on each drill, so that's why it happens, as we already alluded to. That Alec Ayumanor looks like the best footwork doing the drills of all the guys. He looks more sudden and intentional with his footwork. That does it. It's also the first 3 days of camp where you are being taught to run the drills like a professional. So you got to sort of take that for what it's kind of a grain of salt here. What did you see from the receiving options? And we can include Gunner Helm in this, which very excited about how he will be able to impact the passing game. Don't know what else he brings to the offense, but he's a large receiver basically in the slot. So lots of new weapons.
I did not see Gunner Helm running routes. I saw him beating up, coach holding a pad, and he looked good there. I can go forever on this Restrepo thing. I mean, he's got these big, heavy legs.
He does look.
And they are not the legs of a receiver. And you cannot convince me that he's got some short area magic. If you put him next to Adam Humphries and Kyle Phillips,
they will cook him.
There's nobody that would take Restrepo ahead of those other 2 guys in the area that I'm told by everybody that Restrepo is unbelievable at. This short area. Can he find a soft spot in zone?
Well,
absolutely.
Look,
so if you could get the other team to commit to playing zone and put Restrepo in the slot and he can run routes against zone, absolutely. Talk to somebody in the organization. I think they see him as like a practice squad guy with a chance to maybe develop into something. He is incredibly slow. I don't care about the hamstring and the 4.8. And I've argued with people on my podcast where they say, well, it's not a 4.8 because he had a bad hamstring. So we rounded up to a 4.7. And they say, Jerry Rice ran a 4.7 and Steve Largent ran a 4.7. And I said, why on earth would you project the Tennessee Titans, who never find wide receivers, to have found the next Jerry Rice or Steve Largent instead of the thousands of guys who ran 4.7s and didn't make it in the NFL?
And no team wanted to draft. Like
Yes.
it wasn't like he, it wasn't like he was a 3rd round pick. He was an undrafted free agent. Now I will say
they drafted 2 4th rounders who are intriguing, and nobody wants to talk about them. They want to talk about Xavier Restrepo. Why?
All right. Lee
was
says,
productive at Miami. Congratulations.
Keenan Allen ran a 4.71 and balled out. First of all, Keenan Allen was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, the number 1 athlete in America as a high school prospect. The number 1 athlete in America. You do not get that rating if you do not have raw, pure athletic ability that clearly Xavier Restrepo does not have. Keenan Allen also like 4 or 5 inches taller. Now, if you're making a counter argument to the Phillips and Humphreys comparison that you used, which is that thick 2C's lower body will not get hurt going over the middle the way Kyle Phillips and Adam Humphreys did. That's the more so Kyle Phillips. But
Lee, there were 100 guys eligible for this draft who ran 4.7s. Why are you not bringing them as comparisons? Why are you finding Keenan Allen? Why is this guy going to be Keenan Allen as opposed to the other 100 guys who ran 4.7s and weren't drafted? I just don't understand why we automatically go to the 3 best guys in the history of football who ran 4.7s. Why is that going to be the guy the Titans got? I don't understand. Is it their magic fairy dust? Is it their long history of finding Drew Bennett and NWI as undrafted free agents? What is it? What is it about this guy? Because he played with Cam?
I think so. Dean makes a good point here. Restrepo was a decent recruit, not the number 1 athlete in America the way Allen was, and highly productive, absolutely highly productive in college. Jarvis Landry, I still think was taller and a little bit more athletic. PK's about to stroke out on us, says ZD. I do think you're taking the Restrepo love affair a little too personally. Ed Henry says secretly this is PK's favorite time of the year. Bad takes are lining up like
my podcast last week was loaded with Restrepo lovers.
Man,
all Restrepo lovers.
Is it
if
just
I can weed them out from my podcast this Thursday, I would have some kind of Restrepo filter.
So let me ask you this then, because I understand the love and the obsession with Cam Ward right away. That's what fans are supposed to do.
Well, sure, but he's a number 1 pick. Why is there always an underdog receiver that this team has to love? Particularly now, I understand it when they had shit receivers, that you liked Byron Ely because you were putting your hope on like maybe this guy can be better than these shitty receivers that we have. But now they have some guys who are promising. They drafted 2 guys in the 4th round who are promising. Why would you not be more excited about them than about Restrepo?
I tend to agree. I also assume that Restrepo came with Cam Ward. Like Restrepo chose to come to the Titans because of Cam Ward, not because he was good enough or because the Titans loved him or whatever. It seemed like it was a nice little agreement between the two. Now, I agree. What I wanted you to tell me was, what did you think of DK and Io Manor? And
they look fine. They look fine. I mean, again, they're not running against any defenders. And so, and a lot of it's not even full speed. And so again, that favored Restrepo because it was not full speed. But I think they looked like they knew what they were doing. And, there was one play called back from, Alec that didn't go exactly as planned. And so they reran it as after he talked with Cam about it, something that is a nice thing, but not a federal issue. But I'm anxious to see all of these guys mixed in with the Ridleys and the Locketts of this locker room. And ultimately against, a Snead who has been around in the videos that they've put out. He was around in a tug of war thing. So against Snead and against the rest of the cornerbacks.
Anybody else stand? I know we're kind of getting along here. Anybody else stand out to you? Any of the other players? Not everybody was out there, but what other rookies stood out to you? Any other UDFAs that you actually want to talk about?
I thought. I was mostly focused on the draft pick. I thought Slater looked strong. Now again, he was working with two other guys, and it was probably Brandon Crenshaw Dixon, the undrafted out of Florida, that I saw him working against in particular, but he did a good job getting underneath him and lifting him up. He had when I was watching him work with Callahan, he had a pole or a rod, across his shoulders with his arms over it, and was working on whatever that was with Callahan in terms of his stance and how he was balancing his weight. And again, that's got to be some terrific one-on-one instruction.
Oh yeah.
He's got to be really excited to be getting that from a coach of that stature right away when he's on uniform on the field. But he looked strong to me. And I think it would just be so ideal if a guy like that could have a true redshirt year, that where if he's dressed, he's playing strictly special teams, and they could be healthy enough up front that he's not called on to play any meaningful offensive football.
Any chance that any of these guys doesn't make I guess there's a chance that there's 9 guys in the draft class that don't make the team. It feels like Mullings has a slot. It feels like Slater has a slot. Certainly Harris is the forgotten man of the entire draft
class. I think Harris is because they brought in a slew of undrafted rookie corners. And I think they had to spend some money to get those guys. And so I think if some of those guys shine, and if they outshine Marcus Harris, who was the 183rd pick in the draft, they're not going to be super reluctant to cut the draft pick in favor of somebody that might outshine him through training camp that's in the undrafted pool, who got, decent guarantee to come to Nashville.
ZD says, did the rookies go against Bertha? That was a big story last year with Latham.
I don't know if they went against Bertha. That would be at the beginning. And at the beginning, we were all watching Cam.
Yeah, of course. PK has strategically put tax down to blow up all the tire takes. PK takes the batteries out of his remotes when he's not home. That's funny. You got to admit, that's funny.
Speaking of batteries, we are at about 10 years in our house, and the fire alarm sensors are out of gas. And so one of them was chirping despite freshened batteries. And we talked to some neighbors, and they had replaced it about 10 years. So we have just replaced all of them in our house. And there's a big new invention where we have some that are wired. Most of them are wired to each other like it's a network. But they also have backup batteries. But now in a what is it called? Fire alarm. Now,
smoke detector?
Smoke detectors. Thank you. Yeah. Now you can get these smoke detectors that have a built-in 10-year battery, and you don't have to change the batteries ever. This is a miracle. Who knew?
Yeah. I've got to replace a bunch of them. I've got to do an entire townhouse worth of them, and I've got to do like 8 of them in there. And those are the ones I'm getting. Really interesting twist. I did not expect that story out of.
Well, they said I'm setting alarms or something. So.
Z Dean says he loves smoke alarm talk.
Smoke alarm, the Smoke Alarm Network at 440 Sports. It's our fastest growing channel.
Yeah, it's burning up the airwaves, no question.
Yes, Ed, both times it was in the middle of the night.
Of course it is. They're
incapable of chirping during the day.
By law, it has to happen when your children are sleeping.
Any proximity to daylight, it's impossible.
Well, no, Lisa. Now we're off on smoke alarm talk.
But Lee, this lasts for 10 years. And the life of a smoke detector is 10 years.
It's the smoke fire sensor, not the battery that he's talking about. Because and when codes change, they update codes, and then that requires you to get a different. Speaking from experience,
this is a guy who's clearly, it sounds like, renting out property. And I'm impressed.
You got it.
Did you inherit this property?
You got it. This is not your business to ask those kind of questions, but
what I'm asking.
You
can answer it however you like.
It's hard
I
to
don't
go into the
picture you as a
details.
wealthy man
of.
to own 2 properties.
I'm unsure how to take that comment, honestly.
I mean, you're a sports writer. There are very few sports writers who own 2 homes.
I have very few sports writers that own their own business. You are one of them.
Yeah.
So am I.
And I'm not equipped to own 2 homes.
It's a long story. Doesn't have time for this because you've taken up all
I've got
the.
a lot of time.
You've
I've got a lot of time. Look, I'm hydrated.
You've taken up all our riffing with smoke alarm talk, though. You've ruined it. I can't talk about.
You've got time.
I can't talk about.
People, don't you want to know about him owning 2 homes?
Yes, after all the property reappraisal that took place and all of our property taxes that are about to go up, I'm super excited about it. Tell me about it.
What are you doing on the side? See, Rich wants to know. 1,000% he wants to know about you owning 2 homes.
I have done
give us
nothing.
A payoff.
I have done nothing but hustle my entire life, PK.
Sounds like there's some illegal business going on.
Yes.
That's funding a second home.
1,000,000% illegal business is what I'm doing.
Aha.
Okay, you guys want to know? You want to know what happened? You want to know what happened here?
Yes, we do.
My wife's parents died. All right.
I said, did you inherit it? You could have said
no.
Yes,
We didn't. We didn't inherit it. But when your parents die at a stupid young age, that's very traumatic for me and my wife. And now you guys are now we're here. Now we're here. You guys are happy about.
We're all sorry to hear that. We're not happy they died.
Can't believe you guys are rooting for my death and my family.
A second home. That is an interesting
Nobody's
factoid about the Gall family.
I just have a little bit of knowledge.
Are you sure that real estate is the right way to go in this economy?
Have you seen the markets?
I don't know. I don't look at any markets.
Have you seen the markets the last 100 days or so? Ballpark?
I don't look at anything. I don't look at anything.
Oh, I haven't even been able to read all these comments.
On the day after Mother's Day, PK, they say.
What are your thoughts on GFCI outlets? Look, you got.
Are those the one where you have to push the button?
Does anyone know how to take single tap? Does anyone know how to take a single tap breaker board electrical pad and turn it into a double tap? Does anyone know how to do that? Because I got to do that too.
I could barely handle the smoke alarm.
Oh, I got to do that. The smoke alarms are all right. They're super easy to.
Yeah, could you please post the ad for renting your second home so that any
it's
of us
already
might want to rent
already under
when
contract.
When it comes available,
already under contract.
We might want to rent it. Josh Van Valkenburg wants to know.
Josh, hey man, what's going on, dude? How are you, Josh? How's the fam? I hope everybody's good. Josh and I went to high school together.
See, and he wants to know about possibly renting from you.
No, well,
we
no,
all want you to be our
not.
landlord. We can't wait.
What does that say about me?
I call you in the middle of the night, Mr. Gall, Mr. Gall.
Either that means
I smell gas.
Have you changed the smoke detectors in this place?
I need those smoke detectors that I heard about from Kuharsky to have the 10-year batteries.
That says that either you all respect me and that I will be a hyper attentive landlord and I'll take care of your needs and you think I'm like Cam Ward, very attention to detail oriented, or you think you can get one over on me and you think I'm gullible. I don't know which one it is.
No, I want to call your renter and have your renter be a pain in your ass. That's my plan.
No, thank you. No,
I'll find this out. I can find some records.
I'm not going to tell you. It's very easy to find, actually, this kind of stuff. You can find it. In fact, if you would like to find out how much all of the city council and mayor's office houses all went up, you can check all that out.
John Gall, get on this. Find Braden, your brother's, all your brother's information, and send it to us. This was a big finish. I think this was a great twist in the plot. The IRS has joined the chat.
Please stop doxing me. I don't appreciate this. You're doxing my personal life. My wife's personal life. I don't appreciate it. I'm a very private person.
Your wife is fine.
For being so on content for 20 plus years in my career. I'm very private about this kind of stuff.
We're all sorry for your losses. We didn't want to dig into that. We just wanted to know about the home.
Look, I'm going to go have a good cry. It's okay. But just know that you all made me do it. Okay.
Just to keep your investments safe.
I'm sorry, Forrest. This is good. So I need to sabotage the smoke detectors at my in-laws' house is what I'm hearing. That's dark and
think
funny.
You're combining two stories.
That's dark and funny.
Dark
and funny, Forrest. I appreciate that. Oh man. Okay.
All right. I've got some.
I
I have a few smoke detectors to get back to. And I was intending to do that today, unless you're going to keep me here all day with this nonsense
you,
about
you
your
told me you
rental
had
homes.
You told me you had all day and then started taking a sip of water.
I did a switch.
Oh God, I can't keep up with your needs, Paul. Come on now. All right, paulkuharsky.com. Make sure you check out the website. Pay for good journalism. And, of course, thank you to Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. They will buy you a second property. Thank you guys for listening and hanging out. We do appreciate it. I hate all of you. For Paul, I'm Braden. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Cheers.